my God. I believe you're my portion. I believe you're more than enough for me. Jesus, you're all I need. I believe you're my peace. Somebody say, I believe. You are all I need. Come on, we believe that tonight, God. Everybody say, I believe, yeah, yeah. You're my portion. I believe, yeah. You're more than enough for me. Jesus, you're all I need. Jesus, you're all I need. I believe you're my peace. Anybody believe that tonight? You are all I need. Hallelujah. God, we stand in total belief tonight. I believe, yeah. I believe you're my portion. I believe you're more than enough for me. Jesus, you're all I need. Jesus, you're all I need. Nothing is impossible for you. Nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible for you. You hold my world in your hand. Everybody say, I need some believers to say, nothing is impossible. We believe tonight. Come on, say, you hold my world. Say nothing, somebody lift your voice and say nothing. Hallelujah. Not one thing. Not one thing. Somebody say, you hold my world. Say nothing. If you need healing, He can do just that. If you need deliverance, He can do just that. Somebody say, you hold my world. Say it again, say nothing. Anybody believe that tonight? There's not one thing impossible for the Lord. There's not one thing impossible. Whatever you're dealing with, He can handle it. He can handle it. He can handle it. Yeah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, Jesus. Say nothing. Nothing is impossible. Y'all say that. Say nothing. Nothing is for you. Hold my world. Come on, think about that thing you thought that was impossible and say, whatever it is. Everybody say, you hold my world. Now can we just open up our mouths and bless God? Come on, somebody open up your mouth and bless Him. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Let me see here. Make sure my lighting is good. Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. I hope everyone has had a good Monday. I know for some it is spring break. I want to say good evening to everyone. Good evening to everyone. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Before we do, the healing room is just what it is. The goal is for us to heal together by gaining information and gaining knowledge, hopefully so that we can apply what we're learning. Because you know what? Sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. So the goal here is just to have a conversation, ask questions, gain some understanding so that we can take this knowledge and apply it to our daily lives, so we can take this knowledge and pay it forward. I'm going to move my water bottle. You see this beautiful graphic back here? My husband did. He did this new setup that we got going on. So thank you, hubby. And I want to take the time out to just encourage you. First and foremost, hello, my name is Nikisha Fleming, and I am a licensed master social worker. And I want to welcome you to the Healing Room. The Healing Room was created in September of 2021. And it was initially created to market a mental health symposium that we had in Pontotoc, Top, Mississippi last year. But it was such a great success and so much engagement that my husband thought, like, hey, babe, why don't you keep doing this? So I thought, okay, maybe I can do it maybe a couple of times a month and we can just share with conversations and questions. And so now with the Healing Room, we have different conversations, different questions. We even have guests on. Our first guest we had was a wonderful, beautiful soul, Kenyatta Malone Sanders. We also had another beautiful individual. Her name was Holly, and she shared her story of adoption. And then hopefully, hoping to have another guest come on. Also, my mother has been on. My sister has been on. My mother has shared her story of just surviving domestic violence. My sister shared her story of surviving a suicide attempt. So we just have those hard, in-depth conversations. I am a trained clinician, but I always like to let people know that this platform is not therapy at all. This is just for us to have some education, ask some questions, gain some knowledge. So does not take the place of therapy. I am not offering therapy to you, but I'm just sharing some information that, hey, you may not otherwise know, if not being a trained professional. And so tonight I want us to talk about gatekeeper and what a gatekeeper is. I don't know, has any of you, before we get started, has any of you ever heard the term gatekeeper? So I want you to put in the comments. I see my mom's on, I see my husband's on. Hello, Sister Ruby, Sister Shirley. And so have any of you ever heard, while you're coming on, have you ever heard of the term gatekeeper? Have you ever heard the term gatekeeper? And while you're coming on, I want you to go ahead. I want you to like. I want you to share this. I want you to comment. Hey, even take a time and tag a friend. They may not be able to jump on now, but they maybe can go back and watch the replay. And y'all know our goal over here at the Healing Room is let's heal together. So a lot of times we have to unlearn things that we've learned in order to heal. The word of God says we have to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. I was just looking at that, not that scripture, but I was looking at a devotional this morning, the Grace Place devotional. And it was, to me, it reminded me of transformation, basically being transformed. But have any of you ever heard the term gatekeeper? Have you ever heard the term gatekeeper? So some people are saying, yes, I have. Blessings to you all. Have you ever heard of the term gatekeeper? Gatekeeper. Has anybody ever heard that term? I see there's one that says they have. Has anybody else heard of that term, gatekeeper? She said yes. Hill Ken, good to see you, Hill Ken. She said yes, gatekeeper, those initial contacts to anything. Okay. Someone says, no, I haven't. So this is great. So we can all learn something.
So as I said before, I want you to like, want you to share, want you to comment, want you to tag a friend, and our goal is heal together. And we even provide space for you to ask questions. I want you to ask questions, and there's no question that you shouldn't ask. So some of us know things that others don't know, so do not be afraid to ask questions. And also, I haven't done this in a few of the sessions because I feel like they've been so heavy. But if this is a blessing to you, or if you just wanted to support, you can send a blessing to the Cash App. My Cash App is at the bottom of the screen. So you can send a blessing to that Cash App if you would like to as well. This setup, it takes time, it takes energy, marketing, um, and time is something that cannot be replicated. So if this is a blessing to you, if you want to sow, you can also do that as well. Okay. So I'm gonna leave that up there for a few minutes. So I see some people saying yes, people saying no. So a gatekeeper, that term has been used, and you may sometimes it's been used for various different, professions or various different situations. It's used in the Bible. I think another word term for it is watchman. But a gatekeeper, what I'm talking about today, is a term that professionals have used as it relates to pastors or those who are like Hill Ken said, those who make those initial contacts. So I am a therapist, and even as a pastor's wife too, because my husband's a pastor, I would be considered a gatekeeper. And so pastors are gatekeepers, nurses, medical professionals, that would be gatekeepers. But I really want to focus in today on pastors, and particularly even church leadership. You are the gatekeepers really of the community, especially the Black community. And the reason why I say that, because a lot of times, first of all, us as a culture, Black individuals, or even people of color, we are very highly religious and spiritual individuals. And so we hold very true to our roots, and spirituality is a part of our roots. And so if we have anything going on, you can date it all back to honestly pre-slavery, before we were even really forced over here to this continent. We were highly spiritual people. It was a part of our community. It was a part of our life. It was a part of our daily activities. And so we've been spiritual individuals as far as I know from the history that I've studied. And some people may say otherwise or look at it otherwise. But as far as I study, we as a people, as a Black people, as people of color, we are spiritual individuals. So with that being said, a lot of times when we have an issue, what do we do? What do we typically do a lot of times when we have challenges or issues, right? What do? We tend to go to the pastor. We tend to go to the church looking for answers. Think about it. When slavery was going on, church service was a way of escape, to be with people, to provide hope, to provide encouragement during very, very hard times. Also, too, look at the civil rights movement. Church was a meeting place. Church was also a place where a lot of speeches was done. Think about Martin Luther King Jr. He did a lot of his speeches in church. One of his famous speeches was done in a church. And so church has been a very, very pivotal, very significant symbol as it relates to the Black people or the people of color in our culture, in our daily lives, and our daily schedule. A lot of us have gone to the church for just life answers, daily living, daily encouragement, um, to see our family. A lot of churches, if you go to certain churches, you'll see that there's aunts and cousins and nieces and sisters and grandma. All of them grew up in this one church, and so church is definitely very significant. And so that tone, I'm even going to share something with you that you may or may not know. Back in civil rights movement time, before we gained the right to vote, we called the pastor, we consider him the president. And so, because we consider the pastor the president, we would call the wife the first lady. So that's where the term first lady came from. And it has, as you can see, that has carried from tens and tens and tens and tens and tens of years to now. And so That's where all that came from, because we look like, you know what, I'm not going to respect the president if I can't vote for him. So, hey, my pastor is more deemed honorable and respectful to me and my community. So I'm going to call my pastor the president, and then I'm going to call his wife the first lady. So that's how that cultural term or whatnot, whatever you want to call it, got started. So pastors in our Black community or people of color, and you know, they might even call this in the white community, but they're considered the gatekeepers of the community, because a lot of times before we even go to the doctor, before we go to talk to a nurse, before we go see a professional, we're going to talk to our pastor, right? We're going to get the pastor. Hey, pastor, I got this going on. Can you pray? We think the pastor has all the answers. And if they don't have the answers, then he can find or she can find them quickly, right? We think this whether we admitted it consciously or whether we say it or not. But we think this. Hey, pastor, I need you to pray for me. Hey, pastor, my toilet broke. Call him for everything. And so I want to talk to you about the importance of, if you're a church leader, or even if you're not a church leader, this is good to know, so you can maybe even pray for your pastor and his wife, or pray for those who are in church leadership, or you yourself in leadership. I want you to think about, are you taking care of yourself? What are you doing to make sure that your mind and that you're mentally, psychologically, and emotionally taken care of? Because yes, I'm a therapist. I am a trained, certified therapist. So I have gone to, in total, I've gone to 5 years to do what I'm doing now. And now I've been engaging in 2 years to get my clinical certification. So I have a lot of training as far as curricular wise and as far as training wise, on the job training. And so I have that training, but so I hear a lot of traumatic stories. I have heard a lot of significant trauma. Just when I think I've heard it all and I couldn't hear nothing else, I hear something else. And so I will tell you that being in this particular job, or being in the field of social work, because I've been in the field of social work for a total of going about 7 years. And I've been in the mental health field going on 8 years. I'm not 8 years, going on 4 years. So total, I've been in the social work field going on 7. I've been in the mental health field going on close to 4. So even before being in the mental health field, I've seen a lot, heard a lot, saw a lot. Seen saw same thing. But anyways, you get what I'm saying. And so there was a lot of traumatic events that I saw. And most pastors, if you think about it, most pastors are very, very sensitive to the feelings of others. I think probably pastors and their wives are probably some of the most sensitive people, because you have to have a special type of, I say, heart to care for people and other people, and to really put people needs, and sometimes not needs, above your own. And so it takes a lot from a pastor. And so I want to talk about vicarious trauma, or sometimes people call it secondary trauma. I want to talk about burnout, and I want to talk about compassion fatigue, because they're all have been terms that I have heard used as a professional. But I wonder, have you ever heard those terms used? I want you to think about this. If someone has came up to, think about the most traumatic thing that you've heard, whether it been from the news, whether it been from a family member, whether it been from a friend. Think about the most traumatic news that you've heard. And I want you to ask yourself, and you can even put it in the comments, did that news that they share with you, did it affect you in any way? Because think about it. If someone tells us something that we care about, even though it doesn't directly happen to us, it still impacts us, right? So, for instance, if you hear that your friend is maybe in a domestically abusive relationship, it's not happening to you, but it still impacts you, because your friend, whom you care a lot about, is sharing this information with you. So, think about pastors, and think about pastors' wives and those who are in leadership. and any other, and think about just any health professionals. Think about medical doctors. Think about nurses, right? I have a best friend. She's a nurse practitioner. And so think about how probably at least, I'm going to say at least 3 times a day, a pastor probably gets a phone call that is not good. And his wife too as well, and anybody probably else in leadership. Think about there's 7 days out of the week. Not even talking about Sunday when you gotta prepare and get ready and be there and whatever part you play in leadership or church leadership. But think about how you have to already be prepared for Sunday and the Bible study in between and other things. And think about you get 3 phone calls a day that are not good. Pastor, I need you to pray for me. My husband is in the hospital. This look like this, it look like that. We don't know what's going on. Pastor, I need you to pray for me. My daughter ran away. Pastor, I need you to pray for me. My mother, she might have dementia. So none of those phone calls were just great, right? None of those phone calls were just great news. And I'm not saying that the pastor never gets great news. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just saying, think about the weight that comes with being a gatekeeper. Think about the responsibility that comes with being a gatekeeper. Think about that. The emotional residue that comes with that. The emotional weight that comes with that. The psychological weight. Because first, let me explain to you what vicarious trauma is. So I said vicarious trauma. At any moment, any one of us can experience this. And I want to share with you the definition and then maybe look at some symptoms too as well. So vicarious trauma is basically the process of change resulting from empathetic engagement with trauma survivors. So vicarious trauma is the process of change resulting from empathetic engagement with trauma survivors. So anyone who engages, and when they say empathetic, that means you're putting yourself in the shoes of someone else. That's what they're saying. Make sure my brightness. So when they're saying empathetic, that means I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone else. So when someone goes and shares with the pastor, most of the time the pastor's like, oh, okay, that's you. That's your problem. They don't say that. He don't say that. She don't say that. Lord ain't no telling what happened if they did. But most of the time when you go and you share with a pastor or his wife or anyone in leadership, they're empathizing with you, which means they're putting themselves in the place of where you are to really feel how you feel so they can really see how they can best help you, if they can best help you. So it's very important when we think about vicarious trauma. It's very important as pastors and pastors' wives and anybody in leadership, because sometimes church can become a job. If I must be honest, sometimes church can become a job. I'm married to my husband. He's the assistant pastor. So sometimes church can become a job. And I think some of y'all may be surprised to say this. I think it's important for the pastor or anybody in church leadership, if you serve in any capacity, I think it's important for you to take sabbaticals. I think it's important for you to take breaks. If you've been passing up 10 years and you can't find nobody to step in and teach and preach while you go take a sabbatical, maybe they need to take a sabbatical with you too. Or say, hey, let me bring somebody in and come preach or teach or whatever. I know we have to be mindful of that. But it's very important, not just as leaders and pastors and pastors, it's important to know your limits. Okay? It's important to know your limits. So I'm trying to hold on one second here. So I want to give you some symptoms of vicarious trauma. So think about it. I'm gonna give you this example, y'all, of what example. It's probably like a short-lived example. But let me give you an example of vicarious trauma. So I was watching this documentary. And it was about this lady who went to jail for something, had 3 kids, husband, and it was like a documentary telling about the legal system, and it was some law that was basically unfair to minorities, and that was kind of her situation. Y'all, I watched that documentary. I could only watch about 15 minutes of it. And I was in my office crying. And I got to think about, oh Lord, what if something happened to me? What if something happened to my husband? You know, and so think about that times 10. People are coming to you every day. Not with great news, but with news. I need you to pray for this and you pray for this. So and so sick. My mama may not make it. My daddy may not make it. Oh, we're in the hospital. Doctor's giving up. They put on, so many different things. So many different things. So vicarious trauma, some symptoms of vicarious trauma. It could be lingering feelings of anger, rage, and sadness about the individual, not even you, but about the individual's victimization. So it could be they could be a victim of a system. It could be a victim of a situation. It's just you are really taking on their feelings and you're experiencing them too. Have y'all ever listened to a song, depending on what type of song it is, and you mad? I don't know if you ever listen to it like let's say a rap song and you just mad, you want to fight. Then you listen to a love song, you just like, ooh, I'm in love, And so we as individuals, we as humans, we have to be careful with our emotions. We have to be careful with, what emotions we carry, how we show those emotions or express those emotions. We have to be careful. And if you're a person who is in a health field, most of the time you love what you do. If you're a nurse, a doctor, therapist, but even more so a pastor, because a lot of times people, like I said, people are going to the pastor or the pastor's wife before they go to a professional. Look, pastor, I've been tired and my feet and ankles are swelling and I just need you to pray. I ain't went to the doctor yet, but I just need you to pray. You know what I'm saying? And so we have to be careful with our emotions. And yes, some people say, it's all about being careful what we listen to, what we watch and all that stuff. But we just have to be careful how we express our emotions. Because you can listen to gospel this, gospel that, and still, if you have no awareness of your emotions, that could still be a dangerous thing. So we just have to be careful, period, and be aware of our emotions. We just have to be aware of our emotions and how they are expressed. Because some people, we express our emotion and we don't even know we're doing some of the things we're doing. So, like I said, one of the symptoms of vicarious trauma is experiencing lingering feelings of anger, rage, or sadness. And it could be because of just a steady exposure to trauma. Another symptom is you become overly involved emotionally with somebody. We, again, as a pastor, wife, person in leadership, you have to know our limits. Some of us as individuals in leadership, and maybe it's not, you don't serve in church leadership, maybe you serve leadership in another capacity, and it causes you to be a gate, and it puts you in the place of a gatekeeper. Some of us feel the need, and I've seen this a lot, where some pastors feel the need to have their hands in everything. And so the more you have your hands in, the more you're going to be exposed to. Now, I'm not saying that it's unnecessary to have your hands in anything. It depends on where your ministry is in its stages. So if your ministry is probably still in its infant stages, you may find yourself having your hands in everything. But if you've been passing 10, 15, 20, 30 years, then there needs to be some delegation that's going on here, because the ministry should be mature now. That's what that means. The more years, look, I'm 29 years old. I'm mature. My mama's not changing my diapers anymore, okay? My mama not feeding me anymore. I can feed myself. I can go to the bathroom myself. I can wash myself, clean myself. I'm living as a functional, thriving adult now. And so if our ministry is at a certain place, there should be a lot of delegations. People should know their roles. People should be operating. You should be able to look, and they should be doing, know what you're thinking. Maybe that's too much. Ask, know what you're thinking. But it should be at mature level. But even if your ministry is at infant level, and I'm not saying this like I know everything about ministry, but God has blessed me to be able to observe and look at things and to empower people to make things better. So I'm thankful for that. And so if your ministry is at infant level and you find yourself in everything, you still need to take time off. You need to take a sabbatical. And when I say sabbatical, I don't mean no week. I don't mean a sabbatical you still showing up to Bible study, a sabbatical you still showing up on Sunday. I mean a full-fledged sabbatical. Don't nobody need to see you. You need to delegate. Say, hey, if you need something, call so. Delegate or put somebody in place. You should definitely have a deacon, minister, somebody that you can delegate, because y'all, as much as God may have called a pastor and his wife, we are human beings as well. And I can say we because my husband's a pastor. He's an assistant pastor. So we are not superhuman. And look, I'm glad I'm not a superhuman. I'm glad I ain't got to carry the weight of everybody seeing. God did that. Look, it's just some things I tell my husband, like, look, God died for that. I didn't die for that. And we have to, and it's not to be mean and not to ignore and not to not be care, like you don't care about people's and their concerns. Well, we have to, as pastors and pastors' wives and anybody in church leadership, you have to know how to draw healthy boundaries, because if not, you will find individuals. I heard a pastor say this yesterday. I went to go visit my home church, and he said something. I was like, man, that is so good. He said, I've gotten to a place now, and I think he's still my spiritual father, but my previous pastor, he's been in ministry for almost 30 years. And so it could be 30 years, could be over 30 years, but I think for sure it's almost 30. But anyway, somewhere around that ballpark. And he was saying, when someone is coming to me and asking me for help, he said, I ask questions, because if you didn't make it through this month, then I'm asking questions of how you're going to make it through the next month. And I think that's good, because if not, as pastors and pastors, because we're so compassionate, and I'm going to talk about compassion fatigue in a minute. We're so compassionate that people will use us, because they sometimes people say, they don't say it, but they think, well, they can't say no, so I can go to them and they can't say no to me. They can't turn me away. But as pastors and pastors' wives and those in leadership, we have to have healthy boundaries. What good is it going to do? Let me tell y'all this story. I had someone, and I'm not going to say their name. They were in the church. Well, they weren't consistently in the church. They had reached out to me. No, they had sent me a cash app. They requested a cash app from me. They requested a cash app from me. And I think they requested one from my husband too. And for rent money. And so I looked at the cash app, looked at the price. I knew who the person was. And I clicked out of the app. And I was busy at work. I kind of looked at it, clicked out the app. I went back in the app when I had time to really look at it and settle myself when I was, not busy with work. And I rejected it, or I declined it, because, and this is me giving an example of drawing a healthy boundary. What do I look like helping you with rent, and you are a well-able person that can work? You know what I'm saying? It's different if you're working and just your car broke down, something came up, the stuff came up. I don't mind helping nobody who's helping themselves. But you're not helping yourself, I'm not helping you. That's just me. And some people may take that as harsh, but that's just me. And I had another incident. Let me see if I can remember it. I had another incident where somebody reached out to me through Facebook, and the particular individual was needing money for, I can't even remember what it was. They were just saying, hey, can you send me a cash out for, I need this to, I think they need to wash some clothes or something. And they were saying something like they lost their bank card or something like that. And so I looked at it, because at first I thought it was a scam. And then I realized it wasn't a scam. And I was like, and I'm the type person, y'all may think, oh, she's kind of harsh from my last example, but I'm the type person I would give my last. I'm the type person, I would buy an expensive gift for somebody else, and I would go to a consignment store and see if I can find me something that's look that nice, but not don't cost that nice, if that makes sense. I would spend a lot of money on other people. That's just how I am. That's just how I am. And so I had to learn to be wise with my giving, because people will take advantage of that and they'll try to guilt trip you into thinking, well, you the pastor wife, you're not going to help me. No, I'm not going to help you because we got to have wisdom here. And if I keep bailing you out, then how many other times you going to want me to bail you out? But anyways, so I had, back to my example, I had an individual who reached out to me via Facebook. Wanted me to send them, it was like kind of, I think it was like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And they were saying they lost their bank card. And it just didn't make sense. It just didn't make sense, y'all. And they was like, they lost their bank card. And I was thinking to myself, if I Cash App them, how they gonna get it if they don't have a bank card or if they don't have a Cash App card? And so I was just sitting there thinking, and in my spirit, I'm just being honest, for what I discerned, it didn't sound legit. And I found out it wasn't a scammer, but it just sounded like they weren't being honest. And so I told them, I said, hey, I would love to help you, but I just cannot do it this time. I just cannot. And so I didn't. So we have to draw boundaries as individuals, not just church, but members, but just those in leadership. We have to draw boundaries. And it's not to be mean. This is not to not care for people, because I think if you're in the role of a pastor or pastor's wife, God has entrusted you to be over people. But the word of God says we are to equip the saints, not baby the saints, not spoil the saints. We are to equip them. How am I equipping you if I'm enabling you? Like my auntie said, we can be enablers if we're not prayerful. And that's exactly right. So vicarious trauma or secondary trauma, this vicarious trauma means you're not experiencing the trauma directly, but someone may be telling you about it, or you may hear about it, and it still affects you in a significant way. So you can become overly involved emotionally with the individual. You can experience guilt, like, hey, I feel like I should do something, but I don't know what to do. And then you can be very occupied with the thoughts of the person. And it could be, I'm at work and I should be enjoying my family, but I'm worried about what they have going on. I'm with my family, or I'm hanging out, but I'm worried about what they got going on. So we have to be careful with that. And I think that's why, as pastors or those in leadership, if you a parent, sometimes if you can afford to, you need that self-care too. You may not be able to ship your kids off for 2 weeks or so, but find a few days. Or if you got grandparents, thank God for our village of people. If you got parents or grandparents that can come in and step in, you even need that self-care too, because even as a parent, you're a gatekeeper as well. So, and that's definitely true. Boundaries are self-care as well. Boundaries are self-care. So I talked about secondary trauma. And the reason I'm saying this, because my goal with the healing room and my goal just doing what I do, I want people to be well. I want people to be healthy, their whole man to be healthy. And for so many years, the church has told us that mental health and spiritual health are completely separated. That they're like this, but they fit together like a lock and a key. Because think about it, psychology is the study of man and their behaviors. Theology is the study of God and his behaviors. And so you can see all throughout the Bible, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, man making some of the decisions that they make for whatever the reason may be, and God being God and consistent to who his nature is. And so psychology has always been in the word of God. God has always been aware of human man and human decisions. And so why would you think he says, I pray above all things that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers, if God doesn't care about our soul, or he doesn't care about our mental health? You know what I'm saying? And think about that. When he was in the Garden of Gethsemane and he was praying with such heaviness that he was sweating droplets of blood, I tell people that I think the first blood that he shed was for our emotional health, because he was in severe distress. Think about it. He prayed 3 times, if this cup can pass from me. Then he said, nevertheless, yes, he was fully God, but he was fully man too. And so what a weight, what a weight that is to carry. That's what I'm saying. Look, I'm glad I'm not no superhuman. I'm glad I'm not God. I don't want to be Jesus because I need his blood. You know what I'm saying? I need his blood. So we talked about vicarious trauma or secondary trauma. Now I want to talk about compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue. I can't hear you say it, but I want you to say it out loud. Compassion fatigue. How many of y'all have just been like, man, you working, you're hard, you're just tired. You're like, I just need a break. You get to a point, depending on what your profession is, specifically for pastors and first ladies. I have some people that I know who are married to pastors and they work heavily full time in ministry, and they talked about those periods that they've had where they just like, you know what, I'm over it. I don't care, because I think about a pastor who experienced a lot and who's been in ministry for years. They've probably seen new families come in. They've probably seen families leave. They probably seen moments where they feel like the ministry is thriving and banging. They probably seen moments where they feel like, okay, we kind of hit a plateau. And so think about all those emotions that come in. So compassion fatigue is basically an indifference to charitable appeals on behalf of those who are suffering. This is experienced as a result of the frequency or the numbers of such appeals. So think about it. This is again, so an example of a compassion fatigue. So let's say you work in a setting that deals with other people's trauma day in and day out. It could be a hospital, a psychologist, homeless shelter, whatnot. And you may experience a condition of extreme tiredness and desperation. This is called compassion fatigue. Have any of y'all ever had that moment where I'm going to bed early, I'm resting, I'm just still tired. I'm going to work, but I'm not motivated. I have had moments, like I said, I've been in the social work field for going on 7 years, and I've been in the mental health field for going on 4 years. And I can tell within myself when I need a break. It's like my brain just stops. Or it's like my capacity gets really, really full. And I have to just rest to find a way to filter it out. And I have part of some of the jobs or the environments that I worked in. I have one of the jobs I worked in for about 1.5 years is I was a family protection specialist where I worked with children who were getting abused and neglected. So that was a lot. That was a lot, just being responsible for the safety of a child. That's heavy. And for a child that's not even yours. Very heavy. I did that job for about 1.5 years, and I'm surprised I made it that long because it was a tough job. I mean, you work all day, and then let's say you're on call. And if you're on call, you are expected to go out. It could be in the middle of the night, and you are expected to go out and investigate the situation. And so there was a period when I did that job, you all, and I cried every day. There was a period where I was just like, you know what? I don't care. Can I be honest? Because it was just so much, and it was consistent trauma that I was hearing, that I was experiencing every day. I can't tell you some of the situations that I walked in, some of the houses that I walked in, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. Some of the things that I heard kids say or witnessed kids, experiences, in a sense, seeing them cry when they feel like their parents are not coming. So it's a lot. Yeah, I'm glad Stuart Kimberly. I'm glad she says she can relate. She's a mental health therapist. It's a lot. So thankfully, and you probably know this too, Stuart Kimberly, that thankfully you probably know, okay, I know when I need to take care of. I know when I need to push back. Like I tell my husband, like I know when it's time for me to take off. And I work with other, colleagues, all mental health therapists. And so we all like, yeah, it's about that time that we'll look at each other like, hey, when you taking off? Oh, I'm getting ready to take off probably this Friday. When you go take off? Like a lot of my colleagues this week is spring break. So a lot of my colleagues, some took off the first half of the week and I took off the end of the week. So a lot of us are very, very, and I think that's why in ministry with my husband, I'm very conscientious of like, we need a break. We love church, y'all. I love church. I love the ministry that I'm a part of now. I love my church family. But I'm gonna be honest, there are moments where church seems like work. And I have to take, like, even if it could be something as simple as we just gonna take a weekend and we just gonna go get an Airbnb somewhere and we gonna go to church and we gonna be a guest. So we gonna sit in the back and we gonna enjoy service and we gonna fall out and not have to work and sing and do, not it, it becomes work. And sometimes when things become work, you're even in your relationship with God, you become robotic. And so it's nice to have that freshness. It's nice to be able to go to a church service, not have to work, and just enjoy. Okay? And just enjoy. And yes, I have experienced, and sometimes compassion fatigue and burnout can be used as the same thing. So I'm gonna give you some signs of compassion fatigue. It's when you're feeling very exhausted physically and psychologically. Like I told y'all, like there's been times where my brain just stopped. I'm in session or I'm handling a case or whatever, and I'm just like, I don't even know what to do. I don't even know what to say. Well, normally I'm pretty quick and sharp on my feet. So, and also you feel kind of helpless, hopeless, or powerless. And a lot of times I feel like as leaders in the church, pastors' wife, we've had those moments where we felt helpless. And that's where this vicarious trauma can come in. The compassion fatigue can kind of lead into the vicarious trauma because you feel the need to have to know the answer, or you feel the need to have to help them, or you feel the need to have to be the one to take them out of their situation. We have to know our limits and we have to know our boundaries as individuals. My capacity may be different than like the young lady Stuart Kimbley. Her capacity may be different than one of her colleagues or her friends or who even her pastor. So all of our capacities are different, which means I may be able to handle a little bit more significant trauma from somebody sharing or whatever versus someone else because I may have been trained to. So another symptom of compassion fatigue is you feel irritable, angry, sad, or numb. There were times too when I was working in child protection services. I was in a just like this little funk where I was just everything was irritating me. Where my water at? I had moved it. But everything was irritating me. I love the kids, but the kids was irritating me. Having to do documentation was irritating me. My boss was irritating me. Everybody go home, they irritated me. And so when you find yourself when you find yourself in that state of just very irritable, angry, and also too numb, you have to check yourself. So when you ever get to a phase where someone's telling you something and you should be responding, I'm gonna say in a humanistic way. Like if someone tells you that they lost a loved one, you're like, oh, okay. No emotion. And you may not just cry, but it might be like, just that empathy. You find yourself numb, then that may be a sign that you are fatigued, compassionately fatigued, okay? Also, if you experience compassion fatigue, it can mean that you are detached and you may have a decreased pleasure in activity. So this can kind of lean into some symptoms too of depression as well. And so it's very, very important for us to check in with ourselves. To check in with ourselves. I asked some questions earlier, and I'm gonna get to those on my story. I'm gonna get to those in a bit. And so now I'm gonna talk about burnout. So I talked about vicarious trauma or secondary trauma. I talked about compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue is basically I think compassion fatigue, I think these two are kind of going in levels of severity. So vicarious trauma, that can be significant. It can be the same symptoms as PTSD. So post-traumatic stress disorder, a lot of times people who may experience combat, who have been a part of dangerous environments, dangerous neighborhoods, intimate partner violence, such as domestic violence, sexual trauma, all those individuals can experience PTSD. So vicarious trauma, you can have the same symptoms as PTSD, even though you have not directly experienced the trauma, but just because you heard it, and maybe as a bystander, or maybe someone told you, it has impacted you, and now you're experiencing symptoms as well. Compassion fatigue is basically you could be another symptom of being in the help fields, pastors, wives, church leadership, even nurses, doctors, therapists, social workers, anybody who works in the helps field. Then you could get compassion fatigue where you become numb, where you're just exhausted physically and mentally. And this may be a sign that you need to take some time off. You need to take some time off. So we're gonna look at burnout. Now, all of us as individuals, we reach a point of burnout. You could be burned out from being a parent, burnout from work, just burnout from life because it keeps us busy and life keeps moving. So basically, burnout is a state of emotional, physical, or mental exhaustion caused by excessive or prolonged stress. So burnout, it doesn't have to directly be trauma, but it could just be stress. Now we do know that there's healthy levels of stress, right? So there could be healthy levels. You're like, what is a healthy level of stress? Well, if you work out, those are healthy levels of stress. When you lifting weights, that's a healthy level of stress because no pain, no gain, right? But then when stress is prolonged, when it's consistent, right? And think about it when you getting ready to speak in front of people, you getting ready to take a test, you experience a level of stress. But that's healthy because hopefully eventually that stress is what it's supposed to do naturally is go away. Right? It may motivate you, it may push you to prepare to perform at your optimal level. But when stress is prolonged, then it may lead into burnout. When burnout is not addressed, then that can lead into probably compassion fatigue. And if you're really working directly in the helps field, it could lead to vicarious trauma. So all these things can lead into the other. So I kind of started at the severe and then I kind of worked my way down. So some symptoms of compassion fatigue, you may be experiencing, again, detachment, low mood, feeling like helpless as well, difficulty concentrating. I can't tell you how many times when I felt myself reaching burnout, where I have felt like I couldn't even get nothing done. I couldn't get my notes done, and I needed to get them done. I had notes that was due that day, and I just couldn't get them done. And I'm sitting in my office like I don't feel like doing nothing. Time to take a break. You may not be as creative. Especially if you're an individual who is very creative. It may reduce your performance and your overall productivity. So why, Sister Kiki, are you talking about this? I'm so glad you asked. Why are you talking about this? Because I'm going to say this. For those who are church members, you may not be in church leadership, but you attend a church faithfully. I believe that ministries are as healthy as the leaders are. I'm going to say that again. I believe that ministries are as healthy as the leaders are. If you have taken no time to care for yourself, and if you definitely have taken no time to care for your home and your family, then your ministry is probably as healthy as you are, which is not that healthy. And think about, as leaders, what we're teaching our members, because we're teaching our members, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Like my daughter, I have a 2-year-old daughter. I'm teaching her even when I'm not directly teaching her, if that makes sense. So she's watching me and she's learning from me even when I'm not talking, even when I'm not saying, hey, Zoe, do this, listen to this. And so it's important as leaders that we try to be as healthy as possible. And even those who work directly in the helps field. And even if you're a boss or supervisor, I can't tell you how many bosses and supervisors I've had who've had insecurity issues. And it bleeds over to how they lead and operate their spaces. And because they're insecure, they want to use that power to fill that insecurity. And what ends up happening is everybody's ready to leave. I'm just keeping it 100. So if you're a leader in any type of capacity, specifically, I wanted to talk about pastors and their wives and those in church leadership, because again, even though I'm a mental health professional and I talk about mental health on this platform, and I'm all about breaking stigmas and having the conversation, it's easy for me because I've been trained in it, right? But it may not be as easy or for someone else, okay? And so that's why, as pastors too, you have to check out your mental health. You have to check out what's going on in your mental health. Because you could be in the pulpit and you could be hurting. Of course, we in the pool. A lot of us in the pews are hurting. We know where our help come from, the Lord. But you could be in the pulpit and you could be hurting. I had did a presentation in September 2021 about when religion meets mental health, because it's all in the Word of God. As much as we gonna try to separate it, we can't separate it, because God, He said, "I want you to love me with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength." And then, if you're able to do that, you can really love your neighbor as yourself, because you're healthy. I can't love you if I'm unhealthy. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to build relationships with people who are mentally or in their soul, they're unhealthy. And it's all about them. And they all think somebody's always out to get them. It's hard to love somebody that always think that you got something against them. That's really hard. And so, but if we're healthy and we're allowing for God to penetrate every part of us, then we can operate effectively. And so I want to encourage pastors and pastors' wives, and I'm going to give time for questions, but I want to encourage pastors and pastors' wives to make sure that you're taking the time off, and those in church leadership, or if you serve in any capacity at church, sometimes it can become like work. And it's not a bad thing to say that. Let me free y'all. Let me free y'all on this afternoon. Church does not equate, or it should not equate, for your relationship with God. Let me say that again. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have that fellowship. First of all, church is not the building, it's the people. So me and my husband, we can get together, we can open up our Bibles, we can pray, we can have church in our house. Okay. Me and my husband, we are part of the church. Me and my husband, we're the part of the church. So I'm not talking about the building. So church activities does not equate for our intimate personal relationship with God. You go to church, you may get encouragement, you may get some hope restored, all that, but it should not equate. You should have your own intimate relationship with God outside of the building. Now I'm gonna say the building. Right? I have my own personal relationship with God outside of me and my husband. I have my own personal relationship with God outside of me and my friends. So my relationship is not dictated on if I go to church or not. Because when the pandemic came and things were shut down, I wasn't looking. Yeah, I was, kind of grieving my more normality. Oh, wow, that's wonderful. I was grieving normality as things as they were, but I wasn't like, oh Lord, what am I gonna do now about you? No, not saying I didn't miss gathering, but I knew that I knew I had a settled ankle relationship with the Lord. So I knew how to get what I needed to get from Him without going to a building, if that makes sense. So I wanted to free some of y'all on this morning. Oh, not this morning. I'm saying this morning, on this evening. And that's awesome, Stuart Kimberly. She's an evangelist as well. So it's important for us to take care of ourselves as workers, whether your career, and as those who may be in leadership in church, and if you serve in any capacity church, and if you have a family member that serve in church, that can be, because you seeing what they got to juggle and what they have to do. So it's important. I asked a question earlier in my story. I'm gonna get to that, and then I'm gonna go ahead and open it up. If y'all have any questions, I'm gonna go ahead and open it up for any questions. Let me get to my story. I had posed a question on my story. Let's think about it. I did say your ministry is as healthy as you are. That's just what it is. That's just what it is. So if you're not really, really healthy, then it's going to be hard for your ministry to be healthy. A lot of times people think ministry is healthy because you got hundreds and thousands of people. They don't make a healthy ministry. I'm talking about the ministry is healthy as the leadership is. So if the leadership is not healthy, then the ministry is probably not as healthy neither. So I asked a question. I said, how do you support members with mental health challenges in your ministry? And some of the answers that I got: prayer. Somebody put, I'm trying to see. Somebody put by giving encouragement. And somebody else says, I listen to them and encourage them. So I put, how do you help those? And all those things are great. But think about it. Then I asked the question, how do you take care of your mental health as a church leader or member? I got no answers for that. And maybe they just didn't feel like answering. But look, so a lot of people, well, some people gave answers for it. This is what I do to help those in mental distress. But what about when you're in mental distress? What are you doing to take care of yourself? So these are questions, these are things that we need to be addressing. These are questions that we need to be looking at. Okay. It's important. It is very important because I am as healthy, even me being a mom and a therapist. The more healthy I am, the more I can give my clients what they need. The same, the more I can give my husband. If I'm tired, I may not be as patient as a mother. You know what I'm saying? I may not be as attentive as a wife if I'm tired. So it's very important to take care of yourself. So I want to open you a few minutes for questions. That is good. Yes. Support group. And really, this is something that the churches can do. I want to share. I recently found out about a resource that I shared with my husband. I'm going through this training. Me and my husband going through this training to be certified mental health coaches. Now, a coach is different than a therapist. So, a therapist was for probably more of those severe situations, but a lot of churches, if you can get somebody who's maybe passionate about mental health, they don't have to have a training 5 years, 6 years, whatever the training. And like me now, I'm going through my I'm almost finished out with my hours, and then hopefully take my test, hopefully before this year out. But I'm hoping to turn everything in before I have this baby. But what was I saying? Oh, if you're a church member, you passionate like Stuart Kimberly, you're a mental health clinician. You can have somebody that you could appoint over your mental health, whatever you want to call it, ministry or whatever at the church, and creating like a referral list, starting support groups. Maybe sometimes it's a pastor wives, they need a support group. Maybe sometimes there's lay members who need a support group who may be dealing with various issues. You don't have to be a professional to start a support group. If you've been someone and let's say you've experienced miscarriages or loss of babies, infants, you can have a support group because you have experience. Yes, I have training, but nothing helps like the experience. And if you're at a place of healing, you can also encourage others to heal by having a support group. And then two, I call it a mental health first aid kit. So having like a referral list. If it's a situation where you feel like you can't handle it, but then, and I'm not going to put it out here for everybody, but those who are interested, you can inbox me. There's a resource that I found today. Like I said, me and my husband both are going through a training to be certified mental health coaches. Now, a coach is different than a therapist. And so I might do a live on that, coach versus therapist. Which one do you need? That'll be a good one too. But so you can get somebody in your church, in your congregation, they can be trained as a certified mental health coach. And because sometimes that's all people need. And the mental health coaches or just a coach, they're more like looking at like solution focused space. So it's not going to be nothing too severe, but it's going to be more like solution focused base. And so if you just can designate one person or a team of people and get them trained, and you can have all those resources in your church, in your congregation, and those that need it, they can get it from the church, because there's a lot of times people who really need mental health treatment or services that they can't access it because they don't have the resources, insurance, they don't have transportation, they may not have a babysitter, so those keep them from going. And then two, wait lists. Around this time, a lot of places have a wait list, and on average, when it gets around, like even where I work at a university and a student counseling services, and we have a wait list that's about a month and a half long. And so, as far as well, there's other places that have a wait list, and that's just part of it, because you can only service so many at a time based on your staffing, and then based on the severity of the clients that you're already servicing. And that's just with any place in any organization. There are some community counseling places in different areas. They have a wait list too, You may send somebody there and may say, hey, it'll be 5 weeks before you see the psychiatrist. It'll be 8 weeks before you see a therapist. So that's an issue too as well. So the church can get people, train them up. People can go to them first, and it could be like it's like a little buffer. It kind of helps them from having to wait to get the help that they need. Because if I feel like I need some help, I don't want to wait 5 weeks. I don't want to wait 8 weeks, because I already worked up the courage to ask or to go anyways. So, but anywho, since no one have any questions, I want to thank you all for tuning in. And my goal is, as always, is that you will learn how to heal, and that you can take this information, apply it to your life, and it can be a blessing to you. I know I talked a lot about pastors and those in leadership and their wives, but I think all of us can look at some of the terms that I've stated, and you can learn a lot from it. You can say, hey, I've been in burnout. I've been in compassion fatigue. I've experienced vicarious trauma and I didn't know it. And so I want you to really, really, really want to encourage you to take care of yourself. And remember, our goal is to heal together. That's our goal for this platform, for us to learn information that we may be transformed. Okay. So hopefully next week, I plan to have a special guest on the platform next week. This individual is a pastor and a counselor. So he's actually like going through his training, getting his hours too as well. And I had the opportunity to speak with him and ask him if he would be interested to come on my platform and just share some information of being a pastor and being a counselor. And so, but again, pray for your pastors, pray for their wives, pray for leadership, and also pastors and wives, and even myself included. Let's be aware of our limits. Let us accept our limitations, and let's not be afraid to refer if we need to refer. You only get one body. You only get one mind. And so let's take care of ourselves. Let's take care of our one body and our one mind. And then also too, as well, before I get off of this on tonight, feel free to go to my website. The website is below. Check it out. If you have any requests, need some help, want some training done at your church, speaking done at your church, at your job, trainings, whatever, the website is below. If you go to my website, you go all the way down to the page, there is a request form, and it goes directly to my email. So if you have any requests you want to, or you could just get with me on Facebook as well. So if nothing else, then I want to say good night. God bless you. I love you, and the Lord loves you too. All right. Bye-bye.